all the European leaders are gathering in Berlin. But in your view, is President Putin still really in charge?
Well, it looks to me that the direction of travel is entirely favorable to Russia at this point. The last report about these negotiations that we have over here is that Zelensky has said that the United States will give security guarantees equivalent to Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty. Number one, I doubt that. I don't know what Witkoff and Kushner may have said to Zelensky, but I personally doubt that they're ever going to see language to that effect, number one. And number two, why should Zelensky or anybody else think that Donald Trump will give more credence to that kind of security guarantee than he's given to Article 5 of the NATO treaty to begin with? I think this is very troubling. Look, what Putin wants to do is recreate the Russian Empire. And he may have to pause to absorb Ukraine. He's prepared to do that. I think it would benefit Russia to have a couple or 3 years to rebuild their army. Nobody should be under any illusions that he's giving up the aspiration to take the entire country. So to say that words on a piece of paper, which apparently will not include U.S. troops actually stationed in Ukraine for this following period, that's going to be adequate for Ukraine's security. I think they're taking a leap in the dark if that really is the direction they're moving.
Meanwhile, apparently President Zelensky has said that he will give up NATO aspirations, which is a big moment, but there are still territorial issues between the two countries, and it seems to me to be very, very hard to see how they can ever be reconciled. Giving up the Donbas is not something that Zelensky could do and stay in power himself.
I think politically in Ukraine, that's correct. But from Trump's perspective, it comes back to the point you made at the end of your last segment. This is always about Donald Trump. He doesn't have any red lines on what this peace deal should look like. He couldn't care less what the substance is. What he wants is an agreement that he can trumpet as part of his application for the Nobel Peace Prize. He wants to be able to say, like these other 7 or 8 wars that he says in his national security statement he's resolved in the past year, now he's resolved this conflict. And there's no evidence that Vladimir Putin's influence over Trump to persuade him that he's actually the party most in need here has changed a bit. I think this process of negotiating with ourselves, Europeans and Zelensky and the U.S., is something that in the days of the Soviet Union, they tried desperately to do, have the West give up its position internally before they come to us. Then we reject it and force them to go back and make more concessions. I have a very bad feeling about the way this is moving.
Yeah, I think you're right. Now, Ambassador, with respect, you are not a psychiatrist and I am not a psychiatrist. But I know you were listening to our earlier segment about that absolutely extraordinary social media post from Donald Trump about Rob Reiner and his wife being murdered. I just wondered what your reaction was to it.
Well, it's so inappropriate and so beyond the bounds that it's hard to say anything about it, except who but Donald Trump would even think of writing a tweet like that. And, I've hoped for a long time, since in 2015 or 2016, Donald Trump said he didn't like John McCain. He wanted heroes who didn't become prisoners of war. And I thought at that moment, well, that's the end of his campaign for the presidency, that something would get enough attention to his supporters that they'd say, he really isn't qualified to be president. This is one more. I don't know how many straws on the camel's back it's going to take, but it's just unpresidential behavior at an absolute minimum.
Your country is a well-educated, grown-up, serious country, and you wonder whether this kind of thing is going to actually have an effect on Donald Trump's MAGA base. They look at it and they think that's one stage too far for me.
Well, I think we've passed peak Trump here. I think if you look at what's happened in Washington in the past, I'll say 30 to 45 days, I think people now recognize he's not a new president. He's a lame duck president, and we're on the downhill slope. Now, I'm not predicting the rate of descent or how far he'll go, but each day that passes brings us closer to the 26 elections, which many Republicans in Washington, forced to defend Trump's policies, are going to find a lot of unemployed members of Congress after that's over. And then I think things really do go downhill for him. So it's 3 years of Trump in office may seem like a long time, but people need to prepare for the end of Trump and not make conclusions that the U.S. is going to be like this forever. Not going to happen.
That's a very good perspective, very interesting perspective. Still on the subject of perspective, if I may, can I read you something that Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, has said? You'll remember that Donald Trump called Sadiq Khan a horrible, vicious, disgusting mayor. Khan has said, "I'm slightly curious and concerned why the leader of the free world, who's got so many challenges in the Middle East, in Ukraine, issues around climate, issues around trade, is spending time talking about me and giving the impression he's obsessed with me, and for him, it's to explain why." What do you think the reason might be?
Well, there's a contradiction in the president's national security strategy that's reflected in his comments about Sadiq Khan. They say at one point, we reject all this neoconservative stuff about democracy and so on in foreign countries, and at the same time spend a good part of that statement criticizing failures in democracy in European countries, including the UK. So they criticize Europe, but fail to criticize Russia and China. And I think it's just Trump is imposing his views of various issues and his views of himself on other people, because really, what's more important than Donald Trump's opinion? I can't think of anything that's more important. He certainly can't.